right. Welcome to the Pet Life Podcast. As always, I am Patrick, and today I have with me. I will use your bear name just to be safe, Mr. Woodshop Bear. Woodshop Bear, what's up, man?
What's up, brother? Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Dude, of course, man. I'm excited because I realized just real quick as I've been doing this podcast, finding kind of like my niche. What is the reason I want to do this? I want to bring on people who are doing shit. I want to bring on people who are doers and creative types, and learning from them as we have conversations and just kind of, throwing gravy back and forth. And for those who don't know what you do, we'll go over all that. But you're crushing, man. You have your hand in so many hats. And from my point of view, you're always giving 100% to those things that you're doing, and it always comes out great from what I see. So that's why I'm excited to hear more and learn from you, and just kind of pick your mind on some of these things, and then kind of take you where we want. But as I keep rambling, maybe let's take a sec and just explain to people kind of what it is that you do, why you go by Woodshop Bear, and we can kind of dig in from there.
Yeah, totally. So I started a wood shop about 2 years ago. It's something that I never thought I would do. It's just, with the birth of our firstborn child, our daughter, I was like, I got to take it back. Like I can't just continue working for the man. I can't keep doing this daily grind. And then beyond that, I wanted to start something that I could pass down to my children as well. Um,
Mm.
so I started a wood shop. And it's gone great, obviously. And then from there, the bear community took off, and I got offered to be the business editor for Bear Times. And then, yeah, it just keeps going, man. I'm constantly inspired by everybody in the community and
Mm.
just life in general. So I've, as you said, got my hand in a bunch of different stuff. I'm doing freeze dried foods now. We're gonna get a little business with that going. I'm illustrating children's coloring books. I'm gonna do like an actual line of children's books in the future as well. So
That's awesome, man. And I see I'm getting a little lag here, but what's cool, man, is you know when you're doing things, all of a sudden it's like, for example, the I see you guys are doing the freeze dried stuff, the dehydration, and it's like you guys are getting like two freezers or two dehydration machines, and just one on the cost of it, but just seeing how you're not just doing it for like, oh, look at what we're doing. You're actually being like, we are creating not just a service, but we're passing this on, as you said, to family, to your kids, but also more of like community based in such a way that is so for me it's just so inspiring, because it's like, people don't realize, maybe if you want to dive in, like what goes into that process. It's not just oh great, we have this thing now, we can do it. It's like you're growing a lot of the food, you're cooking the foods, and it's not just a little pot. Like it looks like you and your wife are making just racks and racks of these foods. If you want to maybe dive into some of those things.
yeah, totally. Just as with anything, when you start your own business, it can be really overwhelming. I'm glad that I had that buffer of already having the wood shop, established for a couple years. So I knew what I was getting into. But yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it. The freeze dryer itself is really expensive. It uses a lot of power, and as you said, the cooking. It's the the process of freeze drying itself takes anywhere from 1 to 2 days to run a batch, but there's a lot more. You have to prepare the food, you have to cook the food. For instance, we did a batch the other day, and my wife was cooking it up, and it took her 2.5 hours to cook it because you have to cook that amount of food
Yeah.
without a gigantic kitchen. So you gotta allot a couple hours every single day into cooking foods for it, and then you run the cycle, and then you have to bag it all up. And
Right.
yeah, it's a lot, but I'm excited to do it because the options currently, and this is a recurring theme in my mind every time that I get into something new, is the options out there are so there. It's only coming from like gigantic corporations, or like monstrous companies. So with the freeze dried foods, it's like you're a couple options out there that everybody has seen on the store shelves. That's it. None of it's organic. None of it is made with love. It's insanely overpriced. You're getting empty calories. So we wanted to do something different on a much smaller scale.
That's awesome, man. And what's interesting, what you're saying, and for me, it just does hit home is that made with love. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're such in a materialistic world, and you can't. There is material that's going to take place. Like people are going to need to eat. People are going to need some sort of clothing, shelter. We are going to have things that obviously I'm using a computer, but it's nice to know when you get things that someone who's made it, and they can know where the source is, where's the source of direct production, growth, whatever the case is, and knowing like, hey man, that person put everything they had into that batch. Like I know if something's maybe off, like I can either reach out to them, or there's some sort of way of contact where I know that they're doing everything in their power to work with me. And knowing like, hey, they're through conversations with you, or just kind of wherever your websites or social media, it's like this person's genuinely trying to do something good in this world. And I think that's the thing that is so, for me, like when you have grandma's cooking, like that's so like warming, and just it makes you feel better, right? And people can bash the community, they can say, oh fuck, Woodshop Bear, fuck, Pat life, whatever, and it's like, okay, cool. But as time goes on and they see what it is that we're doing, right, or what you're doing, it's like, oh, this person's genuinely just trying to do something from the kindness of their heart. You know what I mean? And so for me,
Yeah.
that's just what's awesome to see what you're doing, man.
Yeah, that's big facts. There's a lot of people out there who will look at somebody like what I'm doing and be like, um, you know, F this guy, must be nice. But it's like I'm not doing anything like this to be better than anyone. I really enjoy being creative. I enjoy honoring God in every way that I know how to. And
Right.
some people might not correlate those two things, cooking or going in the wood shop and making something or making a coloring book or something. But for me, I'm like, I don't want any of that glory. I want to be used like as a vessel to do all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
like use me to
Exactly.
make good in this world. And if I can do it from like a butcher block and a freeze dried meal and a coloring book, then so be it, man. I'm honored to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also too, you're hosting, one of the hosts of the Hanging with the Bears. So you're also getting a chance to allow other people to, well, one, get to know other people within the community, but allowing them to, share their stories, get to know them. And I think that's the biggest thing with community, right? Is, one thing that has drawn me at least to the community is like everybody is trying to bring one another up, not one up each other, but bring up each other in regards to listening to the other people, even if it's as simple as liking a photo. I know it sounds so silly and so ridiculous at times, but we know that that's the society we're in, where it's like, hey, that feeling of like there's support in me trying something new. And it now, not only are they bringing me on the show, like, for the Bears, but it's like, hey, this person's enjoying my content, or at least being like, hey, keep up the good work. And it's coming from a genuine place in their heart. And, for going back to creativity, I think a lot of people who have this animosity towards yourself or myself or the community as a whole is the fact that when they see people creating and they're not willing to create, it's that, at least for me, it's going like my connection with God is lost and theirs is still there, purely knowing that they're willing to create and put themselves on the line and use themselves as that vessel, to spread something good. And
Yeah.
if they're not willing to do that, it's like, well, I'm not the problem. He's the problem. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just
Yeah.
that feeling of jealousy, envy, right? The things that we shouldn't be doing. So, anything you want to add?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And that's the funny thing too is like, I'm I thankfully have not had a bunch of haters come at me. I've had a couple people say some less than ideal things, but I haven't gotten the brunt of it like a lot of people have, and I think it's because I stay pretty low key. Like it's hard to really talk smack about some dude that just makes cutting boards, But
Right.
um, yeah, I think the irony in that is that someone like me or someone like you or some of these other big bear names in the community who catch a lot of flack from people. I'll speak for myself personally, is that I don't even think about those people.
Yeah.
So it's like they hate you, but we're not even. I'm so wrapped up every single day, and like I got to go in the shop and put 5 hours into the shop, and then
Right.
I got to go do the freeze dried meal stuff, bag stuff up, and then towards the end of the day, I'll use that time to go get some illustrations done or work on the website or do social media stuff. And then all interspersed in there, because I'm blessed enough to be able to work from home for all of these things, is I'm constantly with my children. So it's like my mind isn't even on any of these people. That's the funny thing about this,
Right.
is we're not out trying to hurt anybody. We're genuinely trying to make life better for everybody, including those people who will be the first ones to talk shit to us. We're just trying to bring everybody up.
Now, do you think, and I'm not making this episode about, haters by any means, but I think really the underline is, do you think it's a matter of people see how much you're willing to put yourself out there, not, just anyone, put yourself out there to create, that's what's causing such animosity towards other people? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just, like, for me, it's like when anytime you put anything out there, that's your own voice. Clearly you're going to get some sort of feedback, right? Even if it's not hate, I'm just saying you're going to get feedback naturally. And I think, I don't know. And I just ask, it's like, do you think it's a matter of people really just being angry, or it's just a matter of maybe wanting to be heard or
Yeah,
get your attention?
I think it's 100% wanting to be heard. And I know that because that's where I was for a long time. Nobody's perfect. And
Yeah.
I was one of those must be nice people for many years, but I was going through a lot of stuff as well. I had a horrific car accident, all these injuries in my body. So mine was even as simple as many times looking at somebody walking or exercising, and I immediately was like, oh, it must be nice to be able to
Yeah.
walk normally, because I'm in so much physical pain. But a lot of people are experiencing that pain as well. It's just, it may not be physical, maybe, emotional pain or spiritual pain, or, they might be dealing with depression or anxiety or something. So when they see somebody just crushing, it might seem, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why the mind goes there. I think it just does a lot of the time,
Yeah.
to be, have that must be nice reaction. But it's like, I think a lot of it as well is people, I don't know, man. I think people are just lazy today, and they don't understand how easy it is to just do stuff. So they think, someone like me maybe got a handout or something. And it's like, bro, I started my shop 2 years ago with $700.
Right.
If you can't come up with $700 to create a business, man, you need a lot more help than anybody in this
Right.
community can give you. So,
You know what? This is just a thought, and it's something disregarding other people now, but I think for even just my own mindset of like, why is it that, how do I put this? I want to make sure I get it making sense. I think the fact that we're in a system, and when you kind of realize that the system isn't giving you the tools to really succeed in life, like truly succeed, and I'm not saying money, but like knowing what it means to be fulfilled, right? Like when I think people see that in others, or at least when I saw it in others, it's almost like a matter of being like, you were able to find your way out of this and learn and grow, and I haven't. And it's like when I've been in the same spots as you, right? We've all been. It's like you kind of realize you're kind of got one pulled over, a fast one pulled over on you. You realize others are kind of like not afraid when you're afraid. And it's like, it's almost realizing like, how did you overcome, right? And I feel, and for me at least, it's like when I was in that place, it was like, how are these people so happy? How are they finding the joy in certain moments, right? And you kind of, and for at least myself, it's just going, you were able to grow and create in times where it feels like you shouldn't be, right? And that's obviously an illusion, but like, I don't know. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this even more because, as you said, it's like, and I've been thinking about is, why is it that people are so against taking the risks of themselves? Because we say it time and time again, or we hear it time and time again. It's like, you have to just go out and do it. You have to put yourself out there. You allow your creativity to flow. And it's a matter of people not wanting to. So then they get mad and you're like, well, why don't you want to? So for me, it's just, I don't know. And I keep trying to dig this into you because you are some of those people that when it appears, and obviously through your actions, when you put yourself in a mindset of like, I'm going to do this, will you bring it to life? And that's what I think
yeah.
is inspiring. And I guess I don't know if this is stuff that goes through your mind. I know I'm not really making tons of sense here,
Yeah.
but it's
No, you are. It's one of those, I've thought about this for years and years, honestly, because again, I used to be one of those must be nice kids. I think people often project and kind of externalize and judge others. Well, what's a better way to say that? They'll judge what they see in others if it's something that they know is in themselves and they don't like it about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're saying, this guy over here is all drama 100% of the time, it's because you know that you have drama inside and you kind of tend to do
Right.
that as well and you don't like it, but you don't want to own up to that and admit it and make any changes. So you'd rather just talk smack about this dude over here. I think people do that a lot with things that they don't like in others, and then also things that they admire in others. It's this weird duality between wanting something so badly, but then also talking shit about somebody who has that thing. So somebody might say something to me, or talk about me and say, he's out here doing all this stuff. He's crushing so hard. They're not mad at me. They're not mad at the crushing. They're not mad at anything. They're mad at themselves because they don't have the willpower or the desire to just step up and do what it takes. So
Right. Yeah, man. And that's, yeah, it's definitely challenging, but at least for the reason why I also want to bring it up and then kind of pick your brain is when you kind of hear people talking about it, you realize that there's no like formula. There's no like, if you just do this, then it all works itself out. It's realizing like it is complicated when you're trying to break it down for someone who may not see it. But at the end of the day, it's like really as simple as like, as much as I'm not a big fan of Nike, it's like you got to just go out and do it and be willing to work with the trials and tribulations and what comes your way. Like when you started your wood shop, like were you doing woodwork before then? Was it something you've been doing for a long time and you realized you just want to start a business with it, or was it just like I'm gonna just go and try? Like how did that start?
yeah, 100%. My dad was a carpenter, contractor. So when we were children, we had a little exposure to it. He'd take us out into it wasn't even a shop. He just had some tools out in the garage and he'd make us some little wooden toys. That happened a few times. And then he left when I was 12. And, in high school, I took stagecraft, right? It was an easy class. I enjoyed building stuff. That's working with big sheets of plywood. You're making signs and stuff, for the plays that took place in the school. I got a little bit of exposure working with some power tools there. And then I just kind of drifted for many years. I didn't do any woodworking. I didn't do anything. And then it was like, we found out we were going to have our daughter. My original plan was to do like overlanding off-road type trailers. Even though I have a single car garage, I was like, I can make one at a time, send it out, do another one, and that'd be a nice little bit of money. Ended up not going that route, and I walked out into my shop, and which was just a neglected garage at the time, and was like, I got to do something. And I attributed 100% to God. It was one of those divine moments where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but the first step is I need to clean this up because this is a mess. So I went out there, and through that process of cleaning it up, I realized I needed more storage in my garage. So I'm not going to go out and buy all this storage because it's incredibly expensive to do that. So I'm going to go buy wood, right? So I go buy the wood, I bring it back to my shop, and I spent probably 2 or 3 weeks out there every single day, all day, just building cabinets and shop furniture and assembly tables and stuff with no idea whatsoever what I was going to be doing in my shop. But through that process of building all those things, I was like, man, I forgot how much I like woodworking. And yeah, and then it took off from there. And yeah, as you said, there is no formula. I had my plan that I was going to do, which was sell at a farmer's market. I batched out probably thousands of pieces of inventory for it and got the rug pulled out right from underneath me in March of 2020 when all the nonsense happened. So I had to completely shift gears and go a different route. And
Yeah.
you got to be able to adapt 100%.
Damn, man. See, that's what's so inspiring to me because you realize when you just listen, well, one, it's kind of really truly connecting and be like, all right, God, like, what do I need to do? And really listening. And I think we live in a society where listening is so hard. It's so hard for people because listening, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is that it puts you in the moment. You have to be present. You have to be now. You have to be willing to hear something that you might not want to hear, and this has come from somebody who, when I was younger, one of my gamma traits was like I couldn't be wrong. Like I just could not be wrong. Because if I was wrong, then I hurt somebody or I did something wrong, and this total gamma. And what happened is in I can admit to this is what I would do is when someone was trying to explain themselves, I already had an answer. I already knew what I was going to say, and it was a trait that I got from my dad, but seeing how he was, and I realized I'm like I can't do that. If this is the thing that I don't like, why am I still doing it? So it's learning how to listen. And when you hear somebody or you hear, speaking with God and you kind of hear like this road's going to be tough or this hurt, your action was pain, it hurt. You have to go, man, that stings because your heart, you want to be a good person, but you did something maybe wrong, or you're going to have to take this road that's going to be a total 180 to what you thought you were going to do. And you go, okay, let's do it. All right. Or like, I hear that and yes, I take responsibility, right? And I think going back to what we were saying earlier with that maybe people don't want to take that responsibility. They don't want to hear. They don't want to hear the noise. They don't want to hear what is being spoken to them because of everything I just said. But I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are. It's very easy to talk shit about people, but I think at the core of it, I think a lot of people are hurting very badly, um, and they're terrified of even trying because with trying comes the possibility for failure, and with that failure comes the possibility of people saying rude stuff to them, or social shame, or whatever
Mhm.
whatever it is. Some people are just, they really can't take any more than that, which is why I try not to bash people,
Yeah.
for not doing stuff. I just hope that they get the nerve up at some point and realize that, I mean, it is simple to just take that first step. It really is.
Wasn't it funny how your first step, I mean, after you kind of had your little moment with God, just being able to go like, all right, before I do anything, I just need to clean this garage. And as you said, like when you're in the moment, you're listening, you're kind of just present with what you're doing. It starts to manifest itself in such a beautiful way, and it becomes perspective, right? Like, your perspective of the whole cleaning and be like, oh, this is a mess, this is terrible, and you're cleaning it, being like, shit, and this, oh man, things aren't working out, you know what I mean? But instead being like, no, this is, I'm making space, right? Like it's so simple in that regard, but having that ability to shift the perspective and being like, wow, this is a whole new way of looking at this thing that might have looked for many people tedious or overwhelming or exasperating. Like, and this is things that I'm, at least I'm dealing with every single day. And I'm always trying to grow from. Like, if, my son's not going down and I'm getting frustrated, being like, hey, man, instead of being angry, being like, this is a moment I can actually be like, he wants to be with me. Let me just be with him. Even if it's annoying because you're like, you've had a long day or they're fussy, being like, he just wants to be with me, right? Trying to make these perspective changes. I don't know. I feel go really a long way. Anything you want to comment, add, change?
Yeah, totally. Totally. When I was cleaning my shop, it wasn't just about cleaning my shop.
Right.
And it was one of those things where you don't realize it till, a year later when you look back at that time and you go, man, I was so frustrated in that moment. I have a single car garage. So if I get a 4x8 sheet of plywood and I have to lay it down and cut it, I literally can't get back into my house until I get that task done, because there's so little space out there. But, I'm 3 weeks into doing this garage makeover, turning it into a functional wood shop, and not even realizing that while cleaning my garage, I'm also cleaning out a lot of emotional baggage that I had been carrying for a long time, a lot of bad habits, just a lack of work ethic. Although I was working, I didn't want to be. And, with children, that's all I want to do now is I want to be productive and just crush for them in their future. So yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful time. It was an exhausting time for 3 weeks and stressful, but at the same time, I came out of it a completely different person. It might sound silly, but I think that's how it always happens in life, is those little moments where you don't expect anything to happen is where the most change can come from.
Absolutely, man. And I know one thing that Owen talks about, and something I can uh, relate to as well, is like movies and movie breakdowns. And when you understand, like, when you're telling a story, I mean, we're all in a story, right? We're all in our own life story, and that we do have the capacity to change how that story plays out, right? Is that every story is going to at some point have that moment where, your main character, you goes into, the belly of the beast or the belly of the whale, right? Like, these are in all stories throughout time, biblical, whatever. And at the end of the day, you realize that it's those moments we're going through all the time. It's just whether or not in our story, that's the point where you see the change of the character or self. Some people, right, they're still kind of stuck, as I would said, and I've said in past podcasts, like they're still stuck in the exposition, like the wandering character, not knowing where they're going. Like, there's stimulus coming in, there's those inciting incidences, what they call in the script world, but they just don't answer the call. And it's just interesting when you see it. And I think for all of us that are trying to, in these times that look like the worst thing in the world, answer the call and make beauty and crush, you kind of realize, like, this is what it's all about. Like, this is what the journey truly is about. And when you're seeing other people or you're meeting people, whether it's virtually or in person, who are doing the same thing. I mean, you've done meetups. I haven't been in any of the meetups, unfortunately. But how is that, like, emotion, like, inspiring wise? Like, is there just like a whole rush that comes with it when you're meeting people in person? Because I mean, I get it just through these virtual conversations.
Yeah, no, 100%. I get them through when I'm doing hanging with bears or, just talking to new bears. But yeah, we had a meet up at our place recently, and it really was a beautiful thing because it was small. There's
Mm,
probably a dozen people there. Our backyard is just microscopic, so we can't really host that many people. But um, yeah, man, I just grilled, and it was I talked to my wife after everybody had left that evening, and I told her, that felt more natural. Um, than even get-togethers with our immediate family. And it's the most bizarre thing in the world,
yeah,
to have people that are on paper complete strangers.
yeah,
You've never met them in person. You might have talked here and there, but you've never had any real deep conversations with them come over and just hit the ground running with conversation, and everybody's having a good time, and everybody's intermingling with themselves outside. And we had our chickens running around.
that's
My
awesome.
oldest daughter, she's 2.5. That was the other big thing about this meet that we had. Our daughters have grown up mostly during all of the nonsense,
Hmm.
of the last year and a half. They haven't socialized that much. They're still kind of standoffish, stranger danger type, attitudes. Not at all when the Bears came over.
That's
Not
awesome.
at all when any of these bears came over. They came over, and my oldest, who's real standoffish, she doesn't trust anybody for a good half hour, 45 minutes when she meets them. She just walked in and she was grabbing people's hands and trying to walk them outside to show them the garden and show them the chickens, and she was just the center of attention. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's awesome.
Dude, I mean, and that just, I mean, at least from my point of view, that just goes to show you just how much energy and frequency, vibration, all that comes into play, right? Like, in knowing that children do resonate with these and they feel it, right? And it's such a powerful thing, as when you're in a room or in a space where people are on all different frequencies, and you're getting some that are really feeling good, feeling low. Like, you see, like, at least I've noticed with my son, like, kids are just like, I don't know what to do. Like, because you think obviously it's just shyness, and yes, it is, right? It's new people, it's worriness. But then you kind of see, like, well, why is it that they're getting warmed up? It's like, oh, they see it's not a threat, they see it's not this. But at the end of the day, it's all vibration, frequency. Like, it's like, if they see, feel really just emotionally like this feels off, obviously, yeah, you're going to have that standoffish. My son was like that. But when we're in places where there's kids laughing, screaming, like, parks, he's just now ready to go run up and play, because you kind of get this, it's not bears, but it's like you get this sense of, like, community, of like, we're all just wanting to be appreciative and grateful for this time. And that's awesome that she responded so well to everyone coming over, because I mean, for a kid, that's, I can be intimidating, right? You have and all of a sudden, like, 12 a dozen strangers coming over and being like, mom, dad.
Yeah.
I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, it was it was mind blowing. And even our youngest, who is she just turned a year old, man, she can wail. She's got some pipes on her, and if she sees somebody new and doesn't know them, she'll freak out.
Yeah.
Didn't happen once. Didn't
Dude.
my wife and I were, that big eyed look where we're like, is
Mhm.
this really happening? That's what we're doing the whole entire time. And it
That's
was, yeah,
awesome.
it was insane. And it's all vibration and frequency. There is an element of, we don't have to go into this at all, but it's like we went to a pediatrician appointment somewhat recently, a couple months ago, and they look at our daughters because they're kind of standoffish, as if there's something wrong with them because it's modern medicine, whatever. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with my daughters, man. They don't trust complete strangers. That's called being normal. Like you should have that a little bit. So they're wise beyond their years, but yeah, the frequency thing with the bears was insane.
Well, I mean, it goes to show, right? When you find people kind of talking about strangers and not necessarily trusting right away is when you are connecting though with people that may be strangers on paper, like you said, but there's that understanding of frequency and really coming down to like, not just like the, oh, you follow Owen, or, oh, you're about trying to, God, but your actions are speaking through your social media, right? You are trying to be out there. Like you feel the resonance, like it goes without saying. Like there's people that you reach out and be like, oh, this person's nice, but I don't know, it's just something just through social media. Like, I don't know if I would connect with this person. And that's just for at least myself. And you realize it's like, there's a truth component that like is ingrained in like what they're doing or what we're all doing. But then furthermore, being like, am I picking up on that vibration that's meeting what they're doing? Right. Like I can be doing all this great stuff, but people be like, man, I don't know, something feels different about that guy. You know what I mean? That goes without saying. I mean, there might be people that way with me, and that's cool. That's I no ill will towards anyone, but it's cool when, especially kids at such a young age can have that type of discernment of being like, all right, something doesn't feel right here, or hey man, I feel really comfortable in this moment. And I think as a parent, well, I know as a parent, you want that in your children, because I feel in our society, right, the mainstream system, it's like your kids they're sponges now, but treat them like they don't know anything. They're too little. They can't comprehend. It's like, no, it's counterintuitive. This is the most important time to, follow what they're doing, pay attention, looking at it as like, hey, this is them building their personality, who they are, right? How do I shine light on the things that they're doing well, right? That's honest and appreciative and grateful, and how are things to, nip things in the bud. I know I went on a little rant there, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add to it. I just kind of
No, you're good. You're good, brother. I love it. Yeah, spot on, as you always are. We should be encouraging children to use their discernment, and then teaching children what discernment is, because I don't subscribe that or to the idea that discernment is being able to, tell the difference between good and evil. I think discernment is, you know, being able to tell, or excuse me, what's right and wrong,
mm,
but rather what's right and what's almost right.
right.
That's discernment, is that tiny little area right there.
Mm,
Children know what is right and what is wrong, you know.
mm,
So you correct what's wrong, and then teach them proper discernment. That's the goal. It's not just to constantly just tell them, to go against their gut, because it's like, man, that little thing that's whispering in their ear is the same thing that's whispering in yours, and it comes from the Most High. And the goal should not be to shut that off so that they fit into this world. The goal should be, to get them to listen to that and to understand it and be able to decode it and apply it in their lives.
dude, you put it really well in my opinion, man, because that's exactly it, dude. It's your intuition, your gut intuition is everything. And clearly with the society that is affecting our gut, literally knowing what stress does to your digestive tract, all these things. But then obviously on a spiritual level of like literally drowning out that intuition, right? It's still always there, but not really, teaching people, don't listen to that, listen to the expert, listen to the professional who's counterintuitive and constantly changing their story. That's where your attention needs to be, not, not in here, not what's, I mean, you're like getting that churning feeling. And we hear people being like, oh, you guys are sounding like, quacks, crazy people. It's like, well, you know what that feeling is. We all know it. There's no question about it. Every single person, whether you're an atheist, right? You're Christian, you're, in Islam, whatever the case is, you're going to say at some point in your life, man, like my gut's telling me something else. We've all had it in some capacity. And I think that's what as parents right now, or at least in our positions, and a lot of the bears do, and I'm so grateful for, is being like, we need to, we're teaching that next generation of trust your gut, right? Because a lot of the mainstream system is going, you know, go to this school so we can tell you why you're a bad person, or your lineage is bad, or what's wrong with the world, rather than being like, this is what's right and you're part of that solution. You're in the reason why it's doing well. Again, perspective. And yeah, man, that's what drives me now, is like, as a parent, is, as friends and colleagues to people, being like, I want to feed off of that energy with one another, because my intuition is telling me every day that that's right. That's what I need to do. And, I would love to hear more about kind of how you got into the bear community, and kind of how that's the path from where you were, as you said, maybe a little bit more, that must be nice, to, let's take ownership. How did you kind of find that path?
Yeah, totally. So I have been listening to Owen for many, many years, way back before any of the controversy with him, and when he got exiled, because I really enjoyed his comedy. And then I saw him go through that whole ordeal and come out of it. And I've been in the truther world for 15 plus years now. Um, pretty close to half of my life now. I've been on this road. So when I saw someone in Hollywood who I really enjoyed watching go through it, I was like, I sat up on the edge of my seat. I was like, okay, keep going, man, keep going. Um, and thinking the whole time that he wasn't going to make it, like he'd fall off at some point, or the pressure would become too much, and he'd cave and he'd take the ticket and go back to Hollywood. Man, when he didn't, I was so stoked. And as far as the getting more involved with the community, I listened quietly for many years because I was going through a lot of stuff. There's a lot of changes happening inside of me during those, I'd say, about 2 years of listening to streams. And then at the beginning of 2020, when I lost that invitation to the farmers market, I thought the wood shop was done before it had even started.
Mhm.
And so I sent on a box of stuff and a thank you, because I wouldn't have my daughter probably without him and the bear community and everything. And I don't know, man, it just took off. It took off. Everybody got to know me. My business started to crush. There were a lot of doors that opened for me after that. So I just threw myself in at first, because I'm like, when you spend 15 years kind of being ostracized and pushed out of society because you don't believe in mainstream anything, um, it's nice when you find that tribe, because that tribe is what you've been looking for so long.
Absolutely, man, dude. And that's come from someone who hasn't been in it as long as you have, in regards to like truth. What was interesting for at least myself was, I've been listening probably like since 2016. Not as frequently as, maybe the past like 3 years, but same thing with you. Like, and I've noticed a lot of people I've talked to kind of say they sat quietly and listened for a while, because I think a lot of us, as we've been talking about, is even earlier with your wood shop, it's like part of the growth is learning how to just kind of sit back and listen, and kind of listen and reflect. Obviously, yes, there's someone who's putting themselves out there, and there's appreciation, as you said, being like, thank you, Owen, thank you for the people who kind of put themselves out there, but also just being able to go like, all right, this is a chance for me to listen and hear what is being said, right? Like, same thing with you. Like, there's things like, before I really dive in this community, I don't want to be a fake. I don't want to just be jumping in this community and still holding on to some of these old ways that I've had, right? Like, at least not, or at least trying to get on the path of making the changes, like, the porn and like the drinking. Not that I was ever like boozing crazy hard, but like, not that you have to do these things, but it's really more of being like, if I'm going to try to be a part of a community, like, I want not just for myself to know, but it's like for a community, like, I am putting myself in a position where I want to do right by myself, by God, and really put myself in place where, like, if I'm speaking to you or you're speaking to me, like, all the sacrifices we've all made through that journey, it's like we as we said, with frequency, we feel it. I feel that you've been through the ringer, and the person I'm talking to is really someone who's, again, genuine, grateful, appreciative. Not someone who's like, oh yeah, like, I'm gonna do nice things, but like, I'm still gonna go do all these things on the side. I'm still gonna have my old ways and habits, and must be nice, and you know what I mean, like, poor me's. Like, I don't, So at least the same thing with you. Like, I wanted to grow from that, and one of the things, at least in my own thing, and you sound like yours was way before mine, was realizing, like, man, for somebody who's lived their life wanting people to like him, if I'm about to speak truth, I realize a lot of people are not going to like me. And it was realizing, like, is that worth it? Is it worth speaking my mind or our minds, knowing very well that a lot of people are not going to like you anymore because of what you believe? And it was, and I feel a lot of people can relate to that, because it's hard of going, like, you're going to go through the fire. Like, your people that you used to love or used to have relationships or friendships with aren't going to maybe like you anymore. And that was, I think for me, I had to really sit with that one. And that's also why I sat quietly. I don't know if in your journey, you've kind of had some of those similar kind of crossroads, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think I would imagine that a good chunk of this community has walked the same path that I did, as far as getting more involved in the community, becoming more vocal and outspoken, and wanting it to be more, community. In that, I started my truth journey when I was 17 years old. I wasn't even out of high school yet.
Yeah. I
I'm
want to hear this.
spiraling at I'm spiraling at 2 a.m. about 2012 and what's really going to happen.
Yeah.
But not from a fear place, but from a real, what do they mean by the end of an age? And I start looking into all that, and it just led me down all these things. So I'm, in my early 20s, and I've lost most of my friends, people that I considered friends,
Yeah.
because my car accident was when I was 20 years old. So I know, dived straight into depression after that. It was not a good place for many years, but it's like nobody wants to hang out with the dude who's telling you that the Fed is behind, a lot of these things, and we didn't land on the moon, and
Right.
you know, what is this dude talking about with reptilians and stuff? I had my hand in every single conceivable conspiracy theory for so long that I lost everybody around me. Um, so it's like when I found Owen and he started doing streams rather than just comedy, I was going into it with this perspective no different than I go into, like, listening to a Joe Rogan podcast back in the day, or listening to, even a Jordan Peterson lecture or something many years ago, where you're just listening.
Mm.
You know, Jordan Peterson is not talking with his followers. Joe Rogan's not talking with his followers. None of these people that are mainstream. Ben Shapiro doesn't care about you. He really doesn't. He
Right.
couldn't care less. He doesn't know your name. He's not invested in you whatsoever. He just wants you to buy sheets. And it's like, that is that relationship. Um, and that's the thing, is that it's not bad. It's not like they're pulling one over on you. it
Right.
That's what it is. You're going into that voluntarily and giving your consent to listen to them, or to use their product, or to do whatever you want, with nothing in return from them.
Right.
So with Owen, when he started doing streams, that's the attitude that I went into it with originally. Was, I'm going to listen to this guy, hopefully he has some gravy there that I haven't heard yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because the conspiracy world is getting boring at this point. um, I'm whatever, 12, 13 years in at the time, and I'm just wallowing in despair at that point.
Right.
13 years of just absolute darkness, and just seeing all the evil in the world, and nobody's offering a solution.
Right.
Nobody's offering a way out. And then I'm not a comedian. I'm not a movie star. I'm not doing stand-up shows. I have no platform to speak to anybody else about these things. So when I saw someone else go through it, I was like, hopefully he does the right thing here. But I'll listen and see if anything comes out of it. And the moment when it changed for me is when he started doing, when I realized that he was actually acknowledging his chat, and I saw those relationships starting to be formed between him and people that were following him. And I would see people chatting with each other in the chats, and I was like, this is a lot different than anything else that I've ever watched. This isn't something that you put on in the background while you're cooking dinner. I mean, you can, and I do that today. I, listen to streams and stuff on in the shop, but um, the most of the energy in these streams is in the chat and the connection with the people. So
Absolutely, man. And it keeps going back to what we were talking about, frequency and energy, right? Is that there is a life in it where it's, as you said, there's communication with the people that everyone's enjoying, right? Some people unfortunately maybe take it to a place of like idol worship, or people could be like, oh, you're following him like a cult leader. And it's like, no, it's, I mean, for at least I speak for myself, it's not that at all. It's realizing, as you said, that somebody who's been in such a prominent position in our society that we would look at as being like, oh, this is what it means to be successful, being like giving that up to talk then and start a life, to have a family, and then to give it up, but to take the time to then talk to strangers that call themselves fans and giving them at least some sort of voice. And I mean, that for me, same thing, was like, people don't do that. And I know, and again, I was in the film industry, in the acting world in New York City for a long time, and I knew people, and know people that have made it, and you see that there's not that interaction. Like, I know people that you were somewhat close with, but once they kind of became someone, like, you felt that talking to them, they were like, they don't want to talk to me anymore. And these are people I knew. Like, I was like, you were over at our apartment the other day, like, and then you kind of become somebody, and then it's like, oh, I need somewhere else I need to be. I got someone else important to talk to, and so for same thing, kind of just you start to see how powerful it is this. It almost seems like this reversing of time, of like, I'm rewinding, I'm going backwards. In reality, it's this going forward in this weird fractal loop that we're in, of like, no, this is what's important: family, community, tribe, all the things he talks about. So whenever, I feel like a lot of us are talking, everyone's like, oh, you're talking about his own. It's like, because I've grown so much from seeing somebody who's made failures, and just, as we said, sitting and listening and going, man, he's got a point. Is this the path that I want to take? Is this what's important to me? And what's even crazier, kind of playing, just to give a quick, my own story, like, I was, I had my own spirals. I was like, what am I doing in New York City? Like, this is where I really want to be. What do I want? All this shit. And I finally had a moment. I remember walking in, and this was right when I was getting into like listening to Owen a little bit more. This was like, you know, around early Crowder days, before he got kicked off Crowder. Um, and I remember, or at least he left Crowder rather. And I just remember going, finally going, like, God, like, what do I like? What should I do? What do I need to do? Um, and I just remember literally walking in where my old job was, and he was like, "You need to be a father." I just remember in my head hearing, like, "You need to be a father," and I was like, and like I remember like sitting there going, like, "What?" And I'm like, I mean, I'm in New York. Nobody like looks twice when sees a guy sitting there like in the middle of a street. I'm like, "What?" Like, they're like, "Oh, the guy's doing him." And I just remember like, "Oh, I want to be like," I just remember really going like, that's what I want. And then just hearing this between the stuff that Owens talked about and just kind of my own life and just what really mattered to me. And I looked to my left in my old, like, where I used to work, and I just like, I wonder if they'll take me back, where I can start actually like getting structure back in my life. And sure enough, I did. And I met my fiance there, and now we have our son, and but it goes to show you, like, this is bigger than just me being like, all right, I'm gonna change my life and I'm gonna have a family. It was more like, I don't know why the answer is there, but I got that signal. And it's during a time where, someone like Owen is like, the material doesn't matter. The fame, that shit does not matter. You won't find, and this is the things that I mean, it sounds like you too, like, you already know. But you're like, but this is what we've been programmed for so long to believe. You know what I mean? And that's why I can't speak highly enough of him and even the community, because I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, so many people in the community have gone through that. that transformation of being like, what is important. So
Yeah, totally. And that's the funny thing too about again, not to make it about haters, but just to acknowledge the thinking behind it. It doesn't make any sense to me because we're not there are some people that really idolize Owen in an unhealthy way,
mm,
um, which I obviously don't recommend. That'll only lead to disaster. But
yeah,
um, I give credit where credit is due,
yeah,
and I wouldn't have children if not for Owen doing what he's doing.
yeah,
So in my eyes, it's like I look at my daughter, right, who I love more than anything. Um, and then we got blessed with a second daughter, and it's like I didn't even know I was capable of loving more than the first daughter, but now I have two,
mm,
and there's all this love in my heart, and all of this purpose, and all of this drive, and this unspeakable strength was born the second that I saw my daughter being born, and it's like give credit where it's due. I wouldn't be here without that man standing up for what was right and then,
right,
spreading truth. And it's I appreciate what he does because I've said this on Hanging with Bear streams before. You know, a lot of the things that we call spells are things that I think we all are pretty attuned to. A lot of people can see through it.
mm,
What Owen does, which has always been fascinating to me, is he has this, and he says it sometimes too, like almost this autistic way of taking two completely different things and finding that connection between them and seeing how that symbiotic relationship between this conspiracy works, and
right,
then getting down to that root core of it,
yeah,
and then injecting comedy into that as well, and
yeah,
saying, yeah, this is actually happening, but this is both, these are both not even worth thinking about. Go plant a potato, have as many kids as you can. And it's like that repetition of being reminded day in and day out of what's actually important in life. I admire that. It's like it would be silly for somebody to uh, idolize me for woodworking,
right,
like don't idolize the man because he has a talent, appreciate the talent, thank him for the talent, and then apply that talent in your own life.
totally,
Owen's not going to solve all your problems. I'm not going to solve all your problems. Nobody's going to solve anybody else's problems except for you. You got to step up and you got to do it. And as Owen says, iron sharpens iron. 100% valid.
yeah,
100% valid. There are, you know, I I talk to bears 100 times more than I talk to Owen. We're all out here helping each other. So
totally, man. And that's what's so freaking beautiful about this is you start to realize, kind of bringing this to what we're experiencing now is that I'm so prospectively so grateful for all the craziness that's happened in the world, because would I be in this position now if it wasn't for all that has happened? And the answer is just a blatant no, because I don't know what would happen. You know what I mean? I know it sounds like I'm kind of contradicting myself, but the reality is that this is a path that is chosen for all of us by God. It is our path. And when the more you dive into it and really give yourself to, your intuition, God, and being like, I will, as you said earlier, I will be the vessel that you emit this manifestation of creativity, wherever it may be through me. Like I am willing to accept that kind of that role, that responsibility. You start to see like what's created, and when you look back and like, I would never go back and try to change it, right? That butterfly effect, like I don't want to change it there, and because without the hardships, we already know this, but it just rings so true every single day. Like without those hardships, without the darkness, you're not going to get the light. You're not going to be able to not only get the like really experience the light, but to see all of its beauty. But even taking a step further, seeing the darkness as its own beauty in itself, because you realize like, I'm grateful for it. I'm so grateful because I could not have this outcome without it. You know what I mean? And that for me is just why like I get jacked up. I'm like, I see you doing stuff, classical learner, like, inspired by him. I'm like, same thing. I'm writing a children's book. Like I'm just working on it right now. And you start stepping yourself into these shoes where you're like, I've never done this specifically, or I've maybe done a little bit, but I'm willing to give it my all, because you start to realize that there's a spark within all of us for those pieces of creativity. And reality is, as I said, you're just a vessel that it gets shown through. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to really just step into the shoes and be like, all right, I'll take this journey, I'll go. And I think that's
Yeah.
what's awesome, right? Like, never thought in a million years I'd be gardening, or not just gardening, but enjoying the idea of what it really stands for. When I'm making mistakes, like every day I'm looking at my garden beds and just being like, looking for sprouts, and just that satisfaction of being like, I'm bringing more life into this place rather than just taking. Like, that for me, such a powerful feeling. Anything you want to?
100%. Yeah, totally. There's a lot there. As far as, if you could go back and change it, I think one of the most beautiful things that I've seen in the past couple years, especially, but throughout my entire life, is I think a lot of people prior to all this nonsense were just kind of floundering, man. They're just kind of existing and floating through life, going to their 9 to 5, no real purpose, hoping that one day when they get old, they'll go to heaven, right? But it's like, what are you doing right here today?
Mhm.
So I know I can speak for myself. When I had my daughter, there was a very real submission to God, asking him, use me in whatever way you see fit, and just please give me the strength to continue on, especially when the nonsense happened and I started seeing how, the trajectory of the narrative that they were going to push. And I already knew all these things that were going to come down the line. Just praying for strength, give me the strength to just continue on this path and spread truth and be strong for my children and stuff. And it's like, I think we have all kind of wanted to be able to be strong for many years in our lives. And, you know, uh, God gave this, what seems on the surface like this horrific time, right? And we see through it. We see through the spell. We know it's all nonsense. Um, but what a beautiful time to be alive. Because now, with a majority of the world under the spell, we now have all the power. Like, we have the power to make such a more profound impact on these people's lives than we would have had the events of the last year and a half not happened. You know, um, so yeah, if I went back, would I change it? Not at all, man. Not at all. Like, I'm crushing at a level that I never thought I would be in my life. And every single day I'm adding something new on, and I'm never running out of energy. And I'm just, my motivation, my optimism every single day are just growing. My excitement for life is growing. My fear is, pretty much gone, but it's like those little tiny shreds that are still left from time to time that boil up. They're gone so fast, man.
Right.
They're gone so fast. You open up Airtaria Times app and you see a new baby and you're just like, yes.
Yep.
And then all of that nonsense is gone. So
Totally.
yeah, wouldn't change anything. And it's like, just look around, man. It's all a matter of perspective. Some people think that this is the worst time in human history. And it's like, for me personally, what would that be? 10 years ago now, a few years after my accident, um, I was in a dark place, man. I was ready to end it.
Mhm.
Like, I had notes written out and I sat on the bathroom toilet. I won't get graphic, but holding something to my wrist, and I was ready, man.
Yeah.
Like, I had severe PTSD. Part of my I think my is it the amygdala wasn't working in my brain. I was backed up with like 4 years worth of stimuli that wasn't being processed. I wasn't having REM cycles while I was sleeping. I legit thought I was going crazy. So it's like, I look back at that time and I use that, how dark, I mean, just hell on earth, hell in my heart and my mind. Didn't know who I was. And I go, no, man, today's great. Today's a great day. This is a beautiful time to be alive, man. This is, what better time to be alive than right now with all the opportunity in the world. I built a business in the last 2 years because people are tired of cheap Chinese shit being imported and they want something made from a small family, small business here in America, make it local. Same with the freeze dried foods. That's what I'm doing. The coloring books. I went out the coloring book thing, man. I started that because I went out to get coloring books for my kids last week. There was hardly any. I went to 4 different stores around here, and I live in Portland, Oregon. It's a huge city, man. It's one of the biggest cities. I couldn't find anything that wasn't like Disney related. I was like, what? Where have the coloring books gone from my childhood, where it was animals and flowers and
Right,
barns and stuff? So I'm like, if no one else is going to do it, I'll just do it.
dude.
And if
Isn't
even just the Bears, this tiny community, man, if everybody steps up and just does something like that,
yeah,
that's when we crush. That's when we change things, not just for ourselves either. It's
right.
like we want everybody else to wake up, right? In the
Mm,
world, we're like, I've heard from so many people, man. I just wish that everybody would wake up and this would end. And I'm like, oh man, if everybody woke up like that right now, this isn't ending. You're seeing a collapse unlike anything that you could ever imagine. You are seeing so much chaos and dysfunction if everybody woke up like that. Because I woke up. I woke up over the course of 15 years. And there were times where I'd be spiraling for weeks on end about this one little conspiracy. And you have to go through those steps of waking up. And it's like, we went from being those bottom feeders that are scouring the internet for a new conspiracy to we're the ones that get it now. So we can help others up. And we've learned what works and what doesn't work. The Alex Joneses of the world, that approach doesn't work. So
no.
we now get the chance to be like, hey man, go plant a garden, see what it teaches you. Because
Mm,
gardening has taught me more than, 12 years of public school ever did.
totally, dude. I mean, I could speak right now that I've learned more about being a better trainer from gardening than all the curriculum that I've learned. Like just by the correlations with gardening and obviously the podcast talking about like alchemy and things like that. Like I've made so much more understanding of self and the body just from that. And it's yeah, it's 100%, dude. And I was just talking to Anchor Bear the other day on the podcast, and one thing I was bringing up is it becomes a time where you know when you stop trying to wake people up and you're just doing your actions, things being using your creativity and allowing that to shine through you and then manifest when people are waking up, when it's their time, right? Their journey, it's going like, where do I go? Like, what is there a way out of this? Like, is there an alternative? And you realize like, hey, we've been doing this for a while and this is what we're going to continue to do. And it's just giving, as you said, it's not our job to wake people up, but it's about it's always been about our own journey and just, again, submitting to God and being like, use me as this vessel, use my vessel to shine this light. I hope you do. I pray you do. And then through that, your creativity shines. And that's what is so powerful is because you go, is when people, now I understand when people go, I didn't do that. God was speaking through me. I used to think like, I'm fucking stupid. But then I realized I'm like, oh no, that's real. Because there's things and ideas and thoughts and songs and creativities that I'm like, I don't know where that came from. And really knowing like when you start to tap into it, know that it's a download or a signal from God, a message, and speaking to you, however people want to look at it. You go, huh? And that's something. And it's pretty awesome when you can go, all right, I'm gonna do it. And then when you look at the Bible and you look at the stories, you go, oh shit, that's happening right now. I'm living it. I'm in it, and you start going, there's a lot more here, right? And that leads you to some of the conspiracies. But for fun, I'm loving what we're talking about, dude. It always just gets me so inspired. But more to maybe go into some of the grave talk. What is a conspiracy that you like totally were like, oh shit, like one that made you go, oh boy.
Oh man, I think I've had that just about at every step in my journey. Because it's like you learn enough to get comfortable, and then it's that one new thing where you're
Mhm.
just like, oh no, it goes even deeper. Um,
So
flat Earth, obviously, but flat Earth for me came after a lot of the real what people would call scary, the real dark stuff. So when flat Earth came to me, flat Earth was not a quite a shock. It was more of a comfort because I'm going, oh okay, that means that God is real after all.
Yep.
You
That's
know,
exactly what I had.
God is real. And my life started turning around real quick after that.
Yep.
There was fear for a split second because there's that, oh shit, God's real, and then you replay everything that you did, and then shortly after that there was a heavy weeping and a lot of I'm sorries
Yep.
prayed.
Yep.
But yeah, flat Earth. There's some good ones. I like old stuff. I got really heavy into studying like Sumerian culture and
Hmm.
um, their pantheon of gods and their origin story and stuff, and then trying to see how that um, was transformed throughout the ages through different cultures and inconsistencies and details that were changed and stuff. Yeah, that one's wild. That one's wild. I think that was a. I don't. Do you know much about Sumerian culture or
Bring it
anything?
in, dude. Lay it
Okay.
on.
Oh man, there's a lot. Basically, you have Sumerian cultures where the Anunnaki come from.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't come from Ancient Aliens TV show. That's from the earliest ever cuneiform texts that they hand carved in is the story of the Anunnaki, right? So
Yeah. Yep.
uh, this requires you to believe in space and planets, but their story is that their planet was dying. They needed gold. They came to Earth to harvest gold or to mine for gold because they're going to spread it into their atmosphere, reflect the sun, right? You have this the head ruler of the Anunnaki. His name is Anu. He has two sons. He has Enki and he has Enlil. Those two characters, if you look at how they are, Enlil is who we would consider God in the Bible, and Enki is who we would consider Satan in the Bible. But the odd thing, without going way into it, because I mean I studied it for years and I'm still confused by a lot of it. But the strange thing about that religion is that Enlil, who we would think of as God, who's characterized as God, he's the tyrannical one
Mm.
in the Sumerian. He's the one that wants all the praise. He's the one that wants He's the one that's hates humans and stuff. And Enki, who is characterized as Satan, is the one that wants to help humanity out and stuff. So when I was before I came back home to God and everything, I was like, ooh, maybe that's the conspiracy. Maybe they flipped everything and we're praying to the bad one when we should be praying to the. And then I'm like, when you realize that time is an illusion and it's not linear and everything, and these people are working way outside of our dimension and time means nothing to them, it's like, no, man, you could plant something
Right.
knowing full well that eventually someone's going to stumble across it. And then you start thinking, oh, okay, well, why is this ancient Sumerian culture constantly being pushed? Why has it been pushed on, Ancient Aliens, Discovery Channel for the
Yep.
last decade plus at this point? Why do you have all of these people on Joe Rogan's podcast, the biggest podcast in the world? Why are they all talking about it? It's trying to plant that inside of people. It's trying to get them
Yeah.
comfortable with the fact that maybe all religion was wrong and we should be praying to this other guy. Um,
Totally, dude.
yeah, it's a trip.
Well, what, dude, what's so fascinating about that? I mean, there's so much to it that I'm just like, fuck yeah. Is that when you look at it, because I had those moments too, where I was looking and listening and having conversations with people that were more into it than I was, and just hearing them be like, oh yeah, like Lucifer was like the light bearer, like he was actually the one like trying to bring to civilization like light and good, and God was, and I've heard things like that, but I didn't realize at the level of the Sumerian text and things like that. But it was just having moments be like, whoa, like maybe that's why, like the same thing, like maybe that's why religion is so like frowned upon, is because God actually is doing all these bad things. And then, as you said, it just going back to my heart and being like, when I'm doing something, like, is it coming from a genuine place? Like, is this coming from a heartfelt place? Like, is it coming from sincerity? All these different, I guess, like pure uh, characteristics, emotions, whatever the case may be, and just being like, does that sound tyrannical? But it's also then looking at it being like, if I'm not acting in a way that's true and divine, whether people wanted to call it God or Satan at the time, but they like, I would hope my father would try to put me in my place in order to learn. Because you see nowadays where kids, with there's no not reprimanding their kids for not necessarily being like, oh, you're white, reprimand the kid. It's like, hey, if you hurt somebody, you need to understand the consequences. Like, you don't do that. And you start to realize when parents don't do that, when kids are truly acting in a place where it's like, intuitively, like you should not be doing that. You start to realize, being like, you need that reprimanding, you need some guidance, but you also need that person to go, I'll always love you, I'm always here for you, even though I'm angry, or even though you've done wrong and I'm disappointed, right? I still love you. And that for me was why, when I was going through my journey of like, why, like with the flat earth stuff, and I was just like, oh, there is a God. And I go, why are so many more people becoming atheistic? And why is this being pushed? And why is it when you try to bring this to people's attention and telling them, look, you have a purpose here, you are made in the image of God, people get so angry. I was like, why would you get so angry about that? Like, don't you want to know that you have a divine purpose and something greater than what you're being told? And it dawned on me, could be wrong, a lot of people, I'm like, knowing that people are in a trauma state, there's a childlike mentality in a lot of people. I've talked about this before, but a lot of people are stuck in a childlike mindset due to trauma. What does one kid, what do kids hate more than or dislike more than anything? Being wrong and having to face the consequences. And it really dawned on me, going like, now somebody who is realizing that they have a purpose, that father still loves them, being able to look a parent, especially your father, in the eyes as a kid and going like, Dad, I'm sorry. Like, that is a hard thing, as you said, just weeping, because you realize, you're like, I have to come to terms with that. Even under all that, like, he still loves me and I'm still loved. And then it's like, now as parents, right, being able to go, I want to be able to give that to my kid. So no matter what, I will always love you. Like, that, as you said, it's in your heart. It's in you. You didn't realize you could love more because your second daughter, you've been like, that's what it's all about. And that's what's hard for people to wrap their mind around. And you realize, like, oh my gosh, like, this starts unfolding all these layers of things. And you realize, like, how much more, as you said, this is bigger than this world we're in. You're dealing with like fucking like total fractal universe in this stuff, because this is getting,
Bro,
dude, yeah.
bro, I've been thinking about this all day long, and this is the craziest sync right now. That's why I'm smiling, because it's been on my mind all day long. Because this morning I've been thinking about the fractal nature, because everything is fractal, but that fractal nature of the relationship between God and his children and us and our children. And how, even if you believe in God, right, you gain such a deeper understanding of God once you have children. And I was thinking about this today because I've been getting a little bit impatient recently, being totally open. I'm working my ass off. I have been for years. I feel like, as most people do, they're in that hamster wheel. They're not getting any closer to getting the land and getting for me, the shop where I have room to turn around without dropping a tool on my foot or something. So I'm like, I'm just grinding and grinding. Come on, man, give me something here, because I'm trying to do good. I'm trying to get better. I want to be, a truthful person in this world and just make a good impact. And I want to raise my children right and everything. And feeling like just nothing's coming. And then I see my daughter this morning. She goes outside with my wife, right? My wife is watering with my youngest in her carrier. My oldest is just running around tormenting chickens, playing in dirt, having fun. They come inside, they get washed up, and my oldest is 2.5. She just turned 2.5, and she's got this mentality. And I laugh when I see it, where she's like, they come in and I'm cooking up a meal for the freeze dryer. My wife comes over, she starts helping, because it's a lot of cooking and we gotta, time things out and get it all in the freezer at once and everything. She starts helping me out, and my daughter, she wants strawberries, and she asks for strawberries, and my wife's, okay, baby, hang on. Mama's busy right now. I'll get you some in a minute. Man, it's as if her entire world came crashing down. And she's so funny. She has this mentality of like, Mom, I hear you, but you don't understand. If I do not get these strawberries right this second,
Yeah.
the ether will completely be gone. The world will collapse into nothing. She's so hell bent on, she needs these strawberries right now. So us as parents are sitting there cooking this meal, and I'm just kind of chuckling inside because I'm like, here we are as parents preparing this food so that we can put it into a freeze dryer, so that we can make meals, so that we can start a business to make money, which is hopefully going to set up, you for the rest of your entire life and give you this property to live on. Our plan for you, child, is so big right now,
Mhm.
and we are in motion doing it literally as we speak, but all she cares about is those strawberries in that second. And you don't understand stuff like that until you have children.
Mhm.
And then it changes everything, your entire perspective towards God, because you're like, I may want this one thing right now, but what he's planning, he knows far better. There's no argument that we know what's better for our children than they do at 2 years old.
Right.
He knows what's better for us. We are his children. We need to remember that. We are children. We cannot comprehend the things that he has in store. But when you have your own children, you get a better idea of how he works. And that makes you much more patient, much more empathetic towards other people, much more compassionate towards, the things that others are going through and their hardships. And it
Or
makes you want to be a better person. And obviously that's why they don't want anybody having children these days. But it's like, that's
right.
why, Owen said it in the past, and it's 100% true, man. If you want to be that rebel and you want to stick it to the devil, man, have as many kids as you can. Because with each one, your relationship with God grows and your understanding of God grows, and the fear tactics of Babylon no longer work on you.
Totally, man. So it rings so true. And especially like you said with like the strawberries, like it's teaching you. I mean, when they say your kids teach you are more of teachers and you're the student, I really believe that because as much as I am teaching, or me and my fiance we're teaching our son, how to kind of be in, in this world, you start to really understand like when you allow yourself to know that you're here to learn too from that experience, you start realizing like I'm getting mad about or I'm losing my patience over something, and what right now the attention is you. Like earlier today, even like same thing. I can admit, like I'm trying to get my son down normal time. He's not wanting to go down. He's fussing, and I'm sitting there. I'm like now wanting to have to, I have to, text Woodshop Bear and I have to change time, and I'm getting irritated. I'm like, and this is just being honest. It's going. My kid wants to be with me. That's what's important. Woodshop Bear will understand. Like, and this is just the honesty, right? It's knowing like I'm in my own world, kind of getting grumpy, but it's also realizing, being like, what for? The whole point of this life is making sure my son is well, and what he wants right now is to be with his dad. And this is me being honest, right? And going, and it's these moments where it's not like, at least for me, like it's part of the growth is knowing like I'm gonna get irritated. You're gonna get irritated. You're gonna get frustrated. It's not we're not here to say you're perfect. Like we're perfect. It's going recognizing when you're acting like your own child to God, but even to your kid, and going, I recognize it. I'm willing to admit what I'm doing. Even I mean, I do this. I apologize to my son. He's 2. He's about to turn 2. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry that daddy's getting short. I'm sorry that I'm getting frustrated. You know, and it allows me then to go no longer hold grudges, right? Like what do a lot of adults do, or people in, children in adult bodies, they hold grudges. Like you're my son, I can't hold a grudge against you, but it's also teaching me even in life, like not holding grudges to other people. Like people now more than ever, as we said earlier, like for at least me, people are telling me how evil I am or how bad of a person I am, or I've changed in the worst ways possible. Is going, I'm not mad at you. I don't have hate in my heart. I don't, I might be annoyed by it, or it might, kind of rub me the wrong way, especially if it's people I know really well. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't hate you. I'm not going to hold this anger or this spite towards you. And I mean that for me, at least, it's like that's the lessons learned of going like, as you said, like we've been saying, we're children of God. He has given us this ability. He's bestowed us this gift to be a shepherd to our children, to learn, to grow even more. And then, as you said, that's why they don't want you to know that. And people be like, that seems a little far-fetched. It's like, until you've been in it, you can't comprehend it. But it's also not just being in it, but also knowing, just truthfully, like, we're not on a spinning globe. We're not in this infinite universe. Because if you're still in that mindset, then you really might not see this having children. Like, you truly might believe, like, and you see parents masking their kids up and doing all these things where it's like, you're going to follow the same trauma that I've followed, because I'm still in that mindset that there is no divine, you know?
Yeah, totally. That is revelatory in itself when you realize that, like you just said, people saying, like, you've changed in the worst ways possible. And then you look at, what are those changes that I've made in myself? Well, I've calmed down, I've slowed down, I appreciate everything. I had children. I'm engaging and trying to become, more intertwined in this beautiful community of like-minded individuals who value God more than anything. I'm gardening. Um, if that's what makes me evil, that's I'll be evil, because that means that I'm crushing. You know, um, Being evil in Babylon is quite the compliment. Uh, but yeah, it's that fractal nature of, you know, I wrote an article for Beartari Times a while back about that as well. Feeling like, kind of like you can feel like a failure, especially when you're new to coming home to God, because you're like, man, I fucked up again, you know. And then there's that fear of like, oh, what if I lose my salvation, or God gets angry with me or something? And it's like, man, do you do that to your child? No. If your kid's trying to learn how to walk, you're not going to yell at them or punish them if they fall down. They're trying. What's important is that they're trying. Just another lesson learned by children, fractally between you and God. It's like, as long as your heart is right and you're trying to push up and, uh, become a more moral person, more truthful person, man, you're on a better path. You're on a better path than most people are. And, same if, when you fail, man. My 1-year-old, she's walking, man, she'll walk and she'll take one wrong step and she'll plant on her butt, right? She's not even face planting, just on her butt. She'll stumble, fall down. If she's tired, the hands go up. She just go, guttural crying. And, what's your reaction as a parent, right? You look over, you see that she didn't hit her face. She didn't hurt herself. She's just tired, or she's frustrated because she so badly wants to run like, her 2.5-year-old sissy's running, but she just can't yet. So she has a meltdown. And as a parent, my wife and I will look over and go, get up, baby. You're okay. Get up. Again, fractally, how many times has that happened in our life where you're tired and that one thing just sets you off? It's your last nerve. And you go, oh, the world's out to get me and God's angry with me and all this stuff. And it's like, no, man, you just tripped. And in that moment, we want God to save us, no different than my 1-year-old wants us to come pick her up. We tell her, hey, get up. Got your whole life ahead of you. You just fell down. God's doing the same thing, and I'm so like simple-minded in a lot of these things that oftentimes when I find myself in that situation of being like, come on, man, I have to remind myself, I'm like, maybe God's busy taking somebody who's, just lost a loved one or is dying of cancer or something, or, maybe there's some bigger stuff going on in the world and he's trying to move in ways that you will never be able to understand. So yeah, and these are, sorry, the point that I'm making is these are all things that I never saw prior to having children.
Dude,
So
total.
it's that understanding of that fractal relationship that works its way up.
For sure, dude. And just kind of piggyback, and I'll have to wrap up soon, but the thing you said about with your daughter now, like, she wants you to go pick her up, she wants you to do the physical. We're like, no, you can do it, you can get up. It's like, that love is still spoken, but from that vibration, that frequency, right? And it's still there. It's knowing, like, I'm here. Like, I'm not gonna pick you up, I'm not gonna do the physical labor here, but I'm here to, I'm picking you up, with my frequency, my energy, being like, I support you. You're gonna be okay. Right? Like, how many times do you hear people just like, I just want someone to tell me everything's gonna be okay. And they want it from another person. And sometimes people will give that to them and they go, I just don't feel it. I don't, it doesn't feel right. Right. It's the frequency that's behind, it's the emotion. And now it's taking it to another level of being like, you do it with your children, but then that moment where you're like, like, God, like, just please tell me everything is going to be okay. And it comes through you within a wave of emotion. And you just kind of like, for at least me, in moments where you kind of just like break down and you're just like, thank you. I needed that. Like, thank you for letting me know. And I felt it, right? And yeah, dude, it's such a powerful thing, man. And that's why, like, I love everything you're doing, man. I just love speaking with you. Just get so inspired. It's heartfelt, but it's also just, you know energizing at the same time. And I can't say how awesome it is to getting to know you and just seeing how much you're crushing, and just being you know just around the stuff that you're doing and learning from you, man. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate everything you're doing, man. And anything you want to add before we kind of wrap up here?
No, man, I had a good time. Thank you for having me on. You got some heavy hitters on this podcast, so I definitely feel like I'm walking amongst giants. But no, I really appreciate it, man. I love what you do.
I
Um,
appreciate it, man.
I look forward to seeing you grow and crush on, because what you're doing right now is, it would be beneficial for a lot of people to hear these things. So
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without with everyone being so supportive and giving me the strength to continue to keep doing these things. So I do thank you in return. And where can people find you, man? Where can we get more understanding of what Woodshop's up to?
totally. On Instagram, I'm just Woodshop Bear. That's my personal account. If you want to follow the business accounts, pull out a scroll and start reading them off. You can follow at Little Bear Woodshop. That's our Woodshop account. And on Instagram as well, Kodiak Snacks. That's our freeze dried foods. You can find us on Facebook. We are on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel for the Woodshop. Just search for Little Bear Woodshop on YouTube.
Mhm.
And then Beartari Time's Up as well. I'm on there as Woodshop Bear. So
Awesome, man. Well, I will be putting all that in the show notes. And yeah, man, thank you for your time. And everyone watching, thank you for listening. And yeah, make sure you go check out Woodshop's work, and you won't be disappointed. I can assure you that. So on that note, thank you, brother. And thank you for everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.